Part of being an activist is that in addition to researching and composing content, I also have to engage with opposing opinions on social media. Even though that ultimately costs me in both money and time, it's important to do that to keep in step with what's going on and understand whatever position from both sides. Sometimes the comments are so egregiously uninformed or so broad or commonly held that they warrant a public response. For example, I usually deal with religious fundamentalists on issues of faith versus science. So I commented on a post about the so called armor of God. I pointed out that they don't have a belt of truth because there is no truth to their belief, meaning nothing that they can show to be true. I can show the truth of my position, but they cannot show that there's any truth to theirs. And knowing already that they are unable to meet that simple challenge, a few of them tried to change the subject to whatever red herring they could think of. Of course, some of the whataboutisms were political, like this one saying how sad it is that I support Kamala. Religious conservatives often misrepresent science and even religion, their own and everyone else's, but they also twist and spin politics too. So I challenge this guy to explain how or why he thinks this is sad. Get a load of this answer.
Gee, her and Biden gave us high inflation, high mortgage rates, gas, two new wars, high energy, unsecured borders, etc. These are facts.
No, they're not. As I predicted, every one of these claims is false and or misleading, and they're each repeated so often that it would be best to correct them with a public video.
High inflation.
Inflation surged globally as a result of COVID, and this was during Trump's watch, but that part of it was not Trump's fault. It didn't matter who the American president was because supply chains broke down worldwide, not just in the United States. Although the American economy already was slowing down even before the pandemic hit, because as we've seen over the last half century or so, the economy is almost always better under Democrats. Then, once the pandemic began and everything collapsed, the Federal Reserve got involved by trying to restart our economy, and that exacerbated local inflation when they had to raise their interest rates 11 times. Then the global inflation rate was exacerbated by Putin's invasion of Ukraine. The resulting inflation is still a global problem, not an American problem. So again, it doesn't matter who the president is. Still, during Biden's administration, we've had the best economic recovery of all the G7 nations, bringing our inflation rate down to 3.4%, which is lower than at any point in Trump's term. The Consumer Price Index increased 0.2% in July, coming in right at expectations. On a yearly basis, the CPI rose 2.9%, its lowest yearly growth rate since March of 2021, and slightly below expectations of 3%. Similarly, core CPI inflation, which leaves out volatile food and energy prices, rose 0.2% in July, also at expectations. On a yearly basis, core CPI was up 3.2%, its lowest yearly rate since April of 2021. All of that means that we actually have the best economy in the world right now under Biden. Republicans say that Trump's economy was the best in American history. But while prior presidents got this or that metric better or worse, there is no argument but that Bill Clinton's administration had a better economy overall than Trump's. And Trump has the worst record on employment since Herbert Hoover, with Trump's administration losing 2,720,000 jobs. And a lot of that was due to his mismanagement of the pandemic. Remember that Trump had previously fired the entire pandemic response team just before we needed them, so that we ended up with a lockdown instead. And that proved to be too little, too late. Once the economy reopened, Trump got some of those jobs back, but he was still down by 178,000 jobs just in manufacturing. Now, under Biden, unemployment and violent crime are both at a near 50-year low, with unemployment holding it below 4% for 2 years already. That's pretty good. Certainly better than Trump.
High mortgage rates.
Actually, according to the New York Times, homebuyers saw 30-year mortgage rates dip to 6.46%, the lowest they've been since early 2023, which was also while Biden was president. and analysts predict more relief ahead.
Like they've been tracking this since 1972. So there has been no historical bump or drop to interest rates since 1972. Yes, interest rates do this a little bit. Sometimes they go down like they did during the pandemic, and sometimes they go way up after the pandemic. But none of that has to do with a president or a promise made. The Fed is completely independent from a presidential administration. So I'm not suggesting that the Fed's not influenced by politics. They're all politicians in some manner. But the Fed has nothing to do with a rate policy, which they can't make from a presidential administration. It just can't happen. President Trump or President whoever wins can't just say, drop the interest rates to 3%. It's not going to happen because there's a private market funds the mortgage business. So that just doesn't happen. It's never happened. And there's never been any big falls in interest rates or any big rise in interest rates because of a president. It all has to do with the economic environment that they're elected into.
However, with that said, MortgageResearch.com predicts that mortgage rates could rise if Donald Trump were to become president again, because Trump has already touted a 10% tax on all non-U.S. goods and penalties on companies that outsource labor, driving up costs for just about everything. Inflation pushes up mortgage rates. And Trump also recently suggested eliminating the IRS entirely and replacing taxation with tariffs. And when he proposed this, he apparently thought that China would have to pay the tariffs on whatever they export to the U.S. But no, China wouldn't pay any of that. American consumers would. And that would be the most inflationary economic plan ever, substantially worse than taxation. And let's not forget that we have 14 Nobel laureates in economy that were supporting Biden's plan. You're not going to be able to find that kind of support for Trump's plan. Anybody that knows anything about economics at all, I think, would not support Trump's plan. Have you noticed how it is that Trump's entire cabinet has complained that the man is inept, that he's incompetent, that he doesn't understand anything, that he can't communicate, and that all these people will not endorse the man again after having worked for him closely. They're warning us not to elect this man because he's such a complete incompetent boob.
High gas prices.
Gas prices hit a low point in Trump's term, partly because we were in a lockdown such that no one is commuting anymore. So if nobody is using the gas, then supply and demand brought gas prices down. Reopening the economy meant that demand exceeded supply, driving the prices back up. Trump claimed that gas prices dropped to $1.87 per gallon, but that was when the economy was in free fall. Gas prices rose by 28% by the time Trump left office, and they continued to initial spike after that, but prices started coming back down, and they still are coming back down, and they're projected to continue to drop as the economy continues to recover, so that everything will be back to about normal in the next year or so. Well, except for the deficit. Trump added more than twice as much to our national deficit than Biden did. Even if you take out the amounts that both men paid into pandemic relief, Trump still put us more than twice as far in debt as Biden did. And not only that, but while Biden's bill was largely investing in important things like infrastructure, Trump's waste of our finances was on his beloved tax cuts. The one thing he brags about that he actually did cost us well over $4 billion in lost revenue. And it only benefits him and other billionaires. Then, when those tax cuts mature in the near future, they're going to cost the working class even more and add another couple billion plus to the national deficit. Yeah, the numbers do not support the Trump economy.
2 new wars.
Trump held U.S. military operations attacking Syrian government targets, and he presided over the killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani by way of a U.S. drone strike. Note that he ordered the assassination of a military official in a country we're not even at war with. But this act could have started a war. Joe Biden, on the other hand, completed the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and he has not started a new war, nor has he committed any troops to the two highest casualty wars going on right now. the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza. And both of these occurred after Trump's term. But we know that if Trump was still president, then he would have let his beloved Putin do whatever he wants in Ukraine, no matter how immoral that is. And fortunately, Biden was president by then, which may be the only thing stopping Russian expansion from infringing on American interests. Trump has also publicly stated, and many other Republicans have also, that they fully endorse the indefensible genocide that Israel is currently waging in Gaza. But where conservatives will not admit or correct their own errors because they cannot be reasoned with, progressives can, and they will.
High energy.
While Biden did sign an executive order directing the government to cut its own emissions to 65% by 2030 via a host of renewable energy streams, right now, under Joe Biden, the United States is actually producing more energy than we ever have, and more than any other country ever has.
Unsecured border.
I'm so glad you brought up this one because, first of all, we don't have an open border with Mexico. I don't know that anyone even wants that, despite what they say on Fox News. And Kamala Harris was never the border czar that Fox News likes to pretend. Instead, in March of 2021, when the Biden administration faced early stages of an influx of illegal crossings at the U.S. southern border, President Biden tasked Harris with leading the administration's diplomatic campaign to address the root causes of migration from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, including poverty, corruption, and violence. So she was negotiating with those countries. She didn't have anything to do with the border itself. Biden did. Biden spent more on border security than Trump did. I know that Trump likes to pretend that he built a wall when he didn't, and he says that Mexico would pay for it when they didn't. But no, that was a stupid idea, and that's why it's never going to get finished. If you count all the contracts for private industry from U.S. Customs and Border Protection to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement since Joe Biden took office for, that is, 2021, 2022, and 2023, the number comes to $23.5 billion. Although you'd never guess it, given what we normally hear in the media, that already beats Donald Trump's total of only $20.9 billion for his full 4 years in office. Or, to put the matter in a more historical perspective, private contracts for the Biden years already topped the cumulative $22.5 billion spent on border immigration enforcement budgets from 1975 to 1997. That's 22 years, if you weren't counting. Then, Biden promoted a $20 billion Secure the Border Act, a bill that was introduced by Republican Mario Diaz-Balart with almost unanimous bipartisan support. But Trump realized that if the border issue was resolved, then he won't have his usual platform of racist fear that he needs to campaign on. Because he doesn't have solutions. All he has is empty promises. And he has to base all of them on fear. He has to say that everything is a disaster and only I alone can save you, all of that kind of nonsense. And his special favorite is fear of black and brown foreigners. So even though a Republican introduced the bill that would have solved the problem, Trump ordered his minions in Congress to turn around and kill it so that he could blame the Dems for a problem that only exists anymore because he needs it to. He doesn't want to solve the problem. He doesn't know how to solve a problem. All he knows how to do is bitch and complain about problems he knows he can't and won't fix. He needs that problem to still exist so that he can get reelected, using that as his fear base to get his base to vote, motivated to vote for him. He needs that problem to still exist so that he can get reelected. As long as he gets back into power, then he can stay out of jail. That's all he cares about.
She blames companies for price gouging. So the companies waited for Trump to leave office to price gouge?
That had already begun while Trump was still in office, and it continued to peak in its first year of Biden's term. However, increasing economic competition has also been a focus of President Joe Biden. In July of 2021, Biden signed an executive order that created the White House Competition Council, a group dedicated to efforts that increase competition and deliver concrete benefits to America's consumers, workers, farmers, and small businesses. The White House posted a webpage explaining that when there are only a few employers in town, workers have less opportunity to bargain for a higher wage and to demand dignity and respect in the workplace. The Justice Department has also brought antitrust lawsuits against several giants of the American economy, including Amazon, Google, Penguin, Random House, and Simon & Schuster. There were also rumors of antitrust lawsuit being brought against Apple as early as this March. So all the reasons this guy gave for why it is sad that I support Kamala turned out to be reasons why he should. But every time I go into a Trumpster's house, it's like all their charts are upside down or their numbers are all reversed. And this would be a good time to explain the difference between being progressive or conservative. Conservatives like to ridicule progressives by calling us regressives, but they don't understand that that's what conservative literally means. Progressives want to progress. We want to fix things, make them better than they were for everyone. Better, stronger, faster. And we know how to do it while creating jobs and improving the economy and the environment and raising the standard of living and the level of education for everyone all at the same time. While conservatives cling to a mythical good old days that never existed, when America was not great at all and not even good for most people. Some of the authors of Trump's plan, Project 2025, have said things like that they want to undo all the social progress we've made in the last 50 years and repeal the 20th century. They want to go back to a time when there were no leftist programs like regulations on safe food or housing, child labor laws, weekends off, overtime pay, paid time off for illnesses, restrictions against industrial pollution or on how much nature we're allowed to destroy all at once, all that kind of stuff. In short, they want to go back to more than a century ago when the United States was a shitty place to live for everyone but rich, straight, white Christian men who were then the only ones who had rights. If Trump is elected again, his published plan reveals that we will lose all of our rights under the First Amendment. And folks on his team have also said that they're even going after the 14th and 19th Amendments too, and that's not all. Electing Trump would be un-American because it would mean ending our constitutional republic and establishing an incontinent, incompetent, functionally illiterate crime boss as a dictator. As some of us prefer education to indoctrination. We would rather read books than ban them or burn them. And we want people to have more rights and personal liberties, not less. We want to make everything better, while MAGA just wants to ruin everything for everyone. And they'll even vote against their own interests as long as they'll stick it to the libs. So you think supporting Kamala is sad? No. Like the Kennedy family just said today, endorsing Trump is what is really sad. This isn't 2016. We're not talking about establishment corporatists anymore. Now we're talking about people both from and for the working class. If we elect them instead of the crime boss, then once we have eliminated this looming existential threat against our liberties and republic and stick with a smaller, less oppressive government that allows us to believe and love who we want, all that, then we can shift our attention to other priorities like ending the indefensible genocide currently going on in Gaza. So, the American political system right now is kind of like an automatic transmission in a car. If you want to go forward, pull the lever to D. But if you shift into R, then we're going to go backward. And in a sense, we'll go back in time too, to the worst period of our history, to make America suck again.
Democrats get things done.
The Dow hit an all-time high yesterday.
We're seeing historic job growth.
The largest investment in clean energy in the history of the world.
Illegal crossings down 54%.
We will never give up. We will never concede.
40 of his 44 cabinet officials wouldn't support it.
I will not be endorsing Donald Trump.
That's just the beginning.
Defendant Trump, he's on the line for $600 million.
Barred from business in New York for 3 years.
I don't care about you. I just want your vote. I don't care.
We are not going back.